Welcome to the Grit and Grow podcast, where we talk to guests who are pursuing excellence in both sport and life, who encourage and motivate us to become better mentors, coaches, parents, and athletes. My name is Shane Sowden, head men's basketball coach at Briarcrest College, and also your co-host.
My name is Justin Simpkins, co-host and director of Prairie Hockey Academy. Okay, Shane, this is right up there with one of the best podcast episodes we've had yet. Jason Caldwell, incredible leader, first off, but what I loved about it was just his ability that he's done in his life to really understand himself and then live inside of failure and loss, and understanding that that's not the worst thing in life. The worst thing is not being part of something great. I thought that was really cool.
Well, and Justin just took pages of notes, and what really hit for me was hearing Jason talk about his relationship with his dad. You know, our listeners are going to hear from Jason and all these cool things that he's done over the last number of years. But I think his story from an athlete, student-athlete perspective, and then a parent's perception, and the relationship between those two things, it's a really powerful testimony to, I think, what a lot of our listeners are going through. And so to stay tuned for that, just his transparency around leadership, family, failure, success. This was a gold mine of a conversation.
It really was. He just kept showing up in a really kind and simple way, just to remind us that we just need to keep choosing to participate in life in really deep and meaningful ways. Today, we are honored to have with us Jason Caldwell, adventurer, world record holding ocean rower, leadership coach, and founder of Lat 35. Jason spent thousands of miles on the open water, battling storms, fatigue, and the limits of human endurance. Along the way, he discovered that greatness doesn't come from one person, but from the people you bring with you. Enjoy today's episode with Jason Caldwell. Jason, welcome to the Grit and Growth podcast. We're thrilled to have you join us from the Bay Area today, so thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Looking forward to this next little bit of time here. So thanks for having me.
Well, I know we have so much we want to talk to you about today, and you've got a lot of experience and a lot to share with us. Having done a lot of expeditions yourself, but running Lat 35, I think just there's a lot to talk about. But what I want to dive into right away is on your Lat 35 website, you have an opportunity for people to read your journal, essentially journal entries, kind of like blogs. And there's a lot of great ones. The one that really caught my attention was a post that you talked about, a little bit about purpose. It was called "Losing Isn't the Worst Thing." And you had a comment in there about how you have nothing in common with people who, claim to say that they hate losing or that they've never lost. Talk to us about this, please.
Yeah, I love that you started with that. That is awesome. I think we all know that if you choose to participate in life, I'm not even talking about big adventures or doing big audacious things, just choosing to participate in life is going to guarantee that you're going to spend a decent amount of time losing, failing, all that kind of stuff. In fact, not to get too tangential right away, but there's a book. I'm a pretty avid reader. I usually dedicate at least an hour a day to reading. And there's a book called The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which is it's a good book. It's kind of a coming in of age book for high school kids. They made a movie about it, but it's a short book, but it's my favorite title of any book. It's not necessarily my favorite book or anything, but I love the title because the title is basically saying that the perks of being a wallflower are that you won't get hurt, you won't get your heart broken, you won't lose, you won't fail, you won't have to deal with any of that stuff. But of course, it's being ironic because also, the other side of it is that you won't enjoy success. You won't meet interesting people. You won't have these intimate relationships and big experiences that you'll be able to take with you for the rest of your life. And that's the whole point of the title, is it's saying if you choose not to participate in life, you won't get hurt. But the other side of it is so much worse. So I love that. And that's kind of I've always thought about that when I'm going out doing big things, choosing to do something or choosing not to do something. The other part of that is that, all my teammates that I've had great relationships with, teammates that have been, as I always like to say, the right guys, not just the best guys, but the right guys, are guys that have chosen to participate in life in really deep and meaningful ways. And again, not necessarily the athletic side of things, but just chosen to do really difficult things and have accepted the consequences that come with them, which is like, yep, I know I might lose. I might be embarrassed. I might get smoked. I might get doored. All the things that we get worried about, they say yes to. And those have oftentimes become my best teammates, teammates that we have done some incredible things together. And it's like a muscle. It takes some time to work that out because we all have got strong, healthy egos. Nobody wants to lose. But one of the things that I've always said is like, the more I've accomplished, whether it be in my business or in these big kind of audacious adventures, the more I realize like macho-ness is just not a big part of my world. I don't need macho-ness. I don't need people to come to me like you were just alluding to, Justin, which is like, oh man, I'm like you. I hate losing. I never lose. I'm like, oh, that's a type of macho-ness that I don't need in my life. And when I hear guys that, apply to be teammates for our next adventure, and we get a lot of applications, when I hear that right away, this idea that losing is the worst, I was like, we don't have much in common. This is going to be difficult. I'm already kind of thinking this might not be the right fit. So I was macho like that in my early career. I didn't want to lose. I never wanted to show that type of vulnerability. And then I realized that if you just are picking the things that you think you have the highest chance of winning, you're really not experiencing life very well, and you're not learning much at all. So that's where that comes from. Losing is not the worst thing. Not being part of something great, that's the worst thing. And oftentimes when I'm recruiting people and I'm going after people I really want, because I think that they're the right person, I'm going after people that I think don't have that something greater that they can go after right now. Whether they lost or they won, they're just in this kind of intermission period in their life. And I'm like, I'm going to try to come in at the perfect time and offer them that next big thing that they can be part of. And Matt Brown from my second ocean crossing that we broke the world record in is a perfect example. He lost at Olympic trials, just weeks prior to me asking him to be on this team. And he's always said and commented that he's like, Jason didn't even have to finish his sentence. I was in, because I knew that's where I was grabbing him. I was grabbing him in that intermission, that vulnerable period where he's like, I've spent my entire life chasing this dream of the Olympics. I just didn't qualify. He's done all these other things. He's, broken national records in rowing and all this stuff. But all of a sudden he lost that dream. And it's not the losing that I'm going to grab him on. It's the not being part of something greater. So that's where that journal entry comes from.
So where did this, so for you talk about it's like working a muscle. Was this a process for you? Was there a light bulb moment? When did this change of perspective switch for you?
Shane, I'd love to tell you that it was this perfectly intentional thing that I was training. That would be way too clean, and it wouldn't be true because it was not like that. But that's a great question. If I were to look back and think about that, what ended up happening is that when I would lose, I realized that people wasn't that bad, like people are just like pretty impressed that I tried something hard, and I played baseball, then I got injured, so I got into rowing. So all of a sudden I'm in this new sport, going from a sport I was very good at to a sport that I knew nothing about. So I'm back at the bottom, and no one really cared. Like nobody went and said how bad at rowing I was. And I worked my way up to rowing and became one of the better collegiate rowers in my team. And I get invited to an Olympic training team, back at the bottom, but nobody cared. Like nobody was like, "Oh, you suck." It's like nobody said that thing. They were just impressed that I was there and taking my hack, so to speak, and getting beat up every day and coming back to practice the next morning at 6 a.m. And that type of like grit, to use one of your guys' great words is really what people cared about. So I was like, well, I'm taking a beating. I'm losing every single day. Yet I'm looking around and it's like, I don't know. No one really cares that I'm taking a beating. They're just impressed I'm coming back. So I started to get a little bit more comfortable with losing just because people really enjoyed the kind of toughness that made me. And I think that they all see themselves in it. What you don't realize is that everyone else is taking a beating too. You just might not see it. You get on an Olympic training team, you think everyone was that good always. They weren't. They were, at one time they were the worst on their teams. One time they were the new guy on this team and they were the ones taking the beating. I think it's a relief for them to see somebody else come in. It's like, oh man, I was there last year at this time. That was me. I was Jason. And I know what he feels like, and I'm going to make sure I can help him out. So all of a sudden you get all this, like, these great people reaching out to you, asking you, really nice questions, trying to help you out, looking for ways to help you out. I think that's how I got over it. I mean, I'm not completely sure because I'm not even done being the worst person at any given thing. Like I'm still dealing with that. So, I mean, I'll let you know how it goes, but that's where we're at.
That seemed to be, though, you mentioned there was that time where you had that macho-ness about you. And then it came to like, I'm actually, so you're going to show up every day and you're going to seek discomfort almost because you knew that's where growth happened and you became okay with, just call it, losing. And I think that's where maybe where Shane is saying, it's like, at what point, where did you recognize that that ego that we all have was to still, I think it's Ryan Holiday's term, ego is your enemy. At what point did you realize that that ego, and you were able to start dying to that a little bit and then living inside the humility of showing up and getting kicked around every day?
It probably happened at Vesper on this elite training team that I went to after college,
Right.
because I get there and I'm not this is an actual thing that happened. I mean, I've been rowing for a year.
Yeah.
And I get a summer acceptance on this team. They take 16 guys. I'm getting the 16th spot. My collegiate coach, who unbeknownst to me made a bunch of calls to get me on teams on my behalf, got one response to Vesper, which is like one of the best teams in the entire country. And he even said, I literally I just finished my classes. I was going to Philadelphia the next day. I had never been to Philly. They're saying you're going to go on Boathouse Row. I don't even know where I'm going. And the day before, I'm talking to my coach. He says, I don't know what you're going to see out there, but I can promise you that I have not prepared you for it. like that's the vote of confidence that he
Yeah.
gave me. Is like, and I did. I like flew to Philly. This is before the days of Uber, so I got in a taxi out of the airport. I was like, I don't know, Boathouse Row, is that a thing? Like, yeah, the guy went and sent me there. All these old boathouses lined up along the Schuylkill River, a river that up until then I'd never heard of before, but now is considered one of the most iconic rowing rivers in the U.S. at least. And I knock on this 200-year-old mansion that is the boathouse of Vesper, and the guy that opens the door, he's like this big, tall, huge, hunking dude. Is this the average size of these guys? And yeah, sure it was. Like when I got in there, it's like I was the smallest guy. And it was like, this is, I'm like thinking to myself, maybe there was a moment in that day, because I got there in the afternoon. And so there's a morning practice and afternoon practice. I was going to be thrown into the afternoon practice. I had a meeting with the coach. He's like, we have practice in an hour. We'll see what you got, kind of thing. And there was like the first practice we had, it kicked my butt so bad that there was a thing I was thinking to myself, maybe I just leave. Like I don't show up the next morning because like no one will even know I was there for one day. They won't even remember who I was. And I was like, and maybe I just go home. Like that was a thought. So if like you're asking me like where this came from, that was it. Like if you want to talk about the least macho moment a man can have, it's getting compared to 15 other huge athletes that are better than you in every single way. They're bigger than you, they're taller than you, they're stronger than you, they rode at a better school than you did. They are just straight up faster than you on the water. They're faster than you off the water. And this is the thing though. They were kind. That was the other thing that I noticed right off the bat. These were all guys going to Ivy League schools. They were like essentially putting their golden ticket degrees on hold so that they could go chase a dream. They had all graduated, Dartmouth, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown, Columbia. And they're all saying, that's okay. Like career can wait. I'm going to do this thing. And that is a special type of person. And that was the other thing I noticed after that last practice or that first practice was like the kindness. And I wasn't that kind of a guy at that point. Like I was kind of a tough teammate to be around. I was the macho-ness, right? If you didn't work hard or I didn't think you worked hard, it didn't even matter if you did. If I didn't think that you worked hard enough, you were going to hear it from me. And all of a sudden I'm going to this place where I'm obviously the worst. And these people aren't judging me on how hard they think I work. They're judging me on showing up and being a good teammate. And that's the genesis of my like kind of turnaround there from macho-ness.
Hey, it's Justin here. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that I'm a coach, a husband, and a father to 3 busy kids. A couple years ago, one of our daughters was really struggling with her sleep and her breathing and crowding in her mouth. At that point in time, we started looking into things that could help her. And I'm proud to say that we came across a company called Sask Mile. The team at Sask Mile was incredible with our daughter in helping us figure out a solution for her health. The team at Sask Mile made a real difference in her life, in her breathing, in the crowding in her mouth, and in her airways overall. My daughter's back to sleeping better, not grinding her teeth at night, and being able to just breathe, which goes a long way in her physical development. If you have a child that you're concerned about, whether they're snoring, mouth breathing, grinding their teeth at night, struggling with feeding, or just overall mouth development, take my advice. Reach out to saskmile.com. Their team there will offer consultations and incredible help for you. That's saskmile.com, saskmyo.com.
Where did fear come in all this? Like, I'm, an identity. Like, I'm working with a group of young men who are 18 to 23 years old. And something I'm learning this year is I got 18 guys, and a lot of them are so wrapped up in what you call like winning or success and comparing to others and worrying about all these things. And so I feel like more like a psychologist or a mentor coach this year than actually coaching basketball. Where does that like come? Like, you're on those teams, these 16 guys, they're competing for spots and they're kind. What was shaping your identity at that time through those, like from baseball to rowing, which is a crazy transition, by the way.
Not a natural one that you hear a lot about.
I played college baseball, and I'm watching your story, and I'm like, I would never have done that. But it's fascinating. So yeah, just curious about that whole role of just in the mind and fear.
Yeah, I hear two questions in that. The first one is this idea of fear, and I'll just speak to that one first. I think fear is ever present. Like, this is not something you're gonna be able to escape, and your kids should know that. Your athletes should know that. But I look at fear as weights, like in a weight room. Like, the weight doesn't get lighter. 50 pounds is always going to be 50 pounds, but you get stronger, and 50 pounds feels lighter to you. And that's the way it fears. Fear is always there. Like, and to ignore it, to lie and tell yourself you don't have it, even to lean in and like wallow in it is also not a great thing. It's there. Think of it as a constant. 50 pounds is 50 pounds. But if you spend time acknowledging that fear, living in it, understanding yourself and how you react to it and how you respond to it, you will get better at operating within fear. That's how I look at it. So that's it. Don't try to ignore it. Don't wallow in it. Don't pretend it's not there. Don't do any of that stuff. Acknowledge it and work in it. And that's where I think that's the first thing. And the second thing is like kind of this comparison between like a sport I would call a traditional sport like baseball. I think for us North Americans, like, we think about baseball as one of the kind of more traditional sports. Mm-hmm. And going to something like rowing, which quite frankly, I could never even thought about, had never crossed my mind. In fact, when the rowing coach came up to me and, asked me if I'd like to try it out, I was actually picturing whitewater rafting in my head at the time. So I was like, no, so we are way off. And I love baseball. I grew up loving it, playing it, being a fan of it. It's a great sport for many ways, but I was a pitcher for most of it. So it's very individual for me. It was like, it didn't matter how well I got along with the guys. If I could throw a fastball as a strike past hitters, like, I had a job, and I had everyone's respect. It didn't matter how much I was liked. I would be respected, and I would always have a spot. I would always be in the rotation. Same with hitting too. Hitters, guys that can hit, even if you're not good at fielding, they'll bury you at first base or in right field or something like that. As long as they can get you to bat, that's what they'll do. So there's this individualism around it, and it breeds this idea that I need to take care of myself. And that's like kind of how I felt, So then I transfer into this completely interdependent sport that like has no all-star. This is a shock for me. So I'm in college. I've got a chip on my shoulder because I'm not playing baseball anymore. And I'm playing a club sport now. I went from NC2A to a club sport, has no funding. And so I'm still got that mentality, which is like, well, this might not be the best team, but I'll be the best guy on the team. Like, that's how I thought about it. Instead of thinking like, how can we elevate this team to greatness? When I got to rowing at my small school that was well known for baseball, but not known for rowing at all, they had not won a single race ever, ever. And in that, and that was like, okay, that made me not want to be on the team, instead of thinking to myself like, I wonder if I could be part of a team that wins its first race. That never crossed my mind. Now, because we had such a special coach, the same coach that told me he did not prepare me for the next level, and such a special group of guys, we won 7 races that year, 7, and I wish I could say that was because, we got in there and I was like, all right, let's rally around each other. No, it wasn't. I still felt that when I sat in the boat, which is usually 7-seat, I needed to just row as hard as I could. I didn't think about the guy in front of me or the guy behind me until I got to my first summer at Vesper, which is realizing that, like, and I'll just say this because I know I'm kind of talking a long time and I want to get to the next questions, but there was a guy my first summer at Vesper when because I went from collegiate rowing for the year, then I went to Vesper, made the summer team, then went back for one more year of college, and then went to the full year team back to Vesper. And when the first summer there, that summer that I was getting beat up and down the river, there was a guy that said very interesting thing to me. He said, he was one of the he was in the top boat in the top spot. He was the stroke seat of the first boat, but he wasn't the biggest guy. Went to Dartmouth, which is a good school, but not the best. He's bigger and stronger than me, obviously, but not the biggest, strongest guy, and certainly not the fastest on the rowing machine. And I said, like, how do you do it? Like, how are you the top guy? He says, like, guys like us, he was, put me in the same boat as him, figuratively speaking. And he said, we'll never be the fastest. Like, it's just not going to happen. We're not big enough. We're not strong enough. He's like, but we can add the most value. That's what he told me. And again, love to think that it was an aha moment. It took a while to sink in. But what he went on to say was like, all you need to do to be successful on this team is to make sure that the boat goes faster when you get in it. It doesn't matter where the speed is coming from. You just need to make sure that when you get in the boat is faster. And the easiest way to do that is to make sure that the guys, the other 7 guys in that boat, love and respect you so much that when you get in, they want to row harder for you. That is a mind-blowing, like, way of thinking for me at that moment. I'm thinking, you get in the boat, you row harder, that's all that matters. And what he was saying is like, that's the hard way to do it. The easy way to do it is to make sure that the other 7 guys row just a little bit better for you because they love you. The boat will go faster. That's how he had built a career off of not being the biggest, strongest, or most talented rower. And what a hell of a career he built. It took a while to sink in. It took the rest of the summer for me to truly understand how powerful those words were. But when I went back to my university, to Sonoma State, I started bringing back that mentality. And that is, everything we've talked about. That is shedding that individual ego. It's getting rid of that macho-ness. And I started to understand that it didn't really matter how hard I rowed. If the other guys didn't like me, didn't love me, didn't respect me, like, it wasn't going to matter. We weren't going to win.
So a real character forming summer at Vesper.
Yeah. Oh man.
I mean, like huge. And I just think that can apply everywhere, right? I mean, that this is corporate America. This is volleyball teams, basketball teams. It doesn't, this is adventure teams. It doesn't matter. It's like, how can we strive to be the best teammate possible? Every time you get in the boat, it moves faster because people love and respect you so much that they're going to row harder for you. And this is lived out and not necessarily. Yeah, I'd say it's for sure in the Chasing documentary, in the second, tour across the Atlantic, for sure. Yes. It's lived out and in dramatic fashion in that last, 5 days. And we don't need to get into that at the moment, but I just think that, like, this character formation is what we're trying to do. This is what we want to teach this next generation of leaders and athletes who are eventually going to be leaders in our world and our communities about, is like, what does this look like when we think of others? Jason, we had a guest on recently on the podcast named Jamie Gilbert, and he talked about, he's doing this in Oklahoma, I think is where he is at the moment, as a school teacher running a club soccer program with high school age soccer players, and trying to teach them that actually, in order to be great, you have to make your teammates better. That's your job on the pitch, is how do you make your teammates better every time you dribbling the ball and going down? What does that look like, right? And so again, just a really cool connection for me as you speak about this. And you guys say something at the end of the documentary, and I don't remember if it was Matt. I don't think it was yourself speaking, but it says, we built ourselves up to something greater than each of our individual parts.
That
And it
was
was
Matt.
really, it was Matt. It was a really touching moment, honestly. I'm not sure who was crying, but I probably was in the midst of it all. It was an emotional moment, right? It's like you guys, I think you even said, for a moment, for a split second, you don't even want to get off the boat. You've been on it for 30 days and 5 hours and whatever it was, but you don't want to get off the boat at this point. And so that's the experience that you're creating inside of this team. I guess my question to you is, how do we do this today? How do we take these lessons that you're telling us in these stories? How do we teach a Shane, as Shane's question was about his team? How do we take that into a team that maybe somebody who's listening might be coaching today to create these types of leaders?
Yeah, it's difficult, and I don't think there's a silver bullet for this, but I think one of the issues that I've seen is that you don't usually look for those types of answers unless you're like your back's up against the wall, until you're in a very vulnerable state. Like, think about me at Vesper. I'm the worst guy on the team. I can be cut at any moment. I'm looking for answers. It's a survival mechanism at that point. So I'm asking guys like Don, how are you on the top boat? I'm soaking it in. But the problem is we shouldn't wait until our backs are against the wall and we're on the chopping block, or maybe we're a kid that's going to get cut from the team, or we're trying to earn a starting spot to start looking for those answers. It's oftentimes it's the guys when you're at the top, is you're not looking for any of that stuff because you're at the top. You're the captain of the team. You're the best player. Why should I'm not looking to grow because I have arrived. And that's a lot of mentality that I see on teams, especially younger teams, because I wasn't that evolved as a young kid, as a high school athlete. I wasn't thinking like, how other ways can I grow? Right. I was the best player on my team. And as far as I was concerned, it was kind of like, just get out of my way and let me do my thing. So I think where we can focus and where we get as coaches think about this is like, how can we get through to our top players? The bottom players, believe me, they're already doing it. They're trying. I mean, if and that's why we love the movable middle, as we like to call it. We've got the top players that kind of like, you just let them do their thing. This is in sales too, right? We got the top salespeople, just get out of their way, let them do their thing. We got the bottom people. It's like, well, they're probably not going to be here very long, but it's that movable middle, like those people that are trying to get somewhere, that we spend a lot of time on. I agree. Spend some time on the movable middle. But also, let's not just like the time to kind of get out of their way, let them do their things. That's the time that we can start to encourage those people to think about, because they won't be there forever. Not if they choose to participate in life, like we talked about. If they choose to participate in life and they push themselves, they will find themselves back down. And we need to equip them. And even if they stay at the top, because there are some athletes that just never leave the top because they're that talented or that good. Goodness, how powerful would it be if we could instill these types of lessons in them and they could start sharing that with other people? Because sometimes the movable middle kids don't want to hear it from the coach, but they will hear it from the top kid. So if we can help those kids understand there is places to learn at the top, and even kind of disseminate that messaging down to some of the other kids, wouldn't that be nice? And, to speak to Matt is probably one of the most, evolved athletes I'd ever met. We met at Vesper. He was a rower there, obviously very, very good there. Went to Yale, and then rowed at Oxford after. I mean, just he had the talent, but he was always looking up ways to get better. He was always thinking about that. And I loved that about him. And I learned a lot from him, not just on that row, but before that, when I was at Vesper, he was always just trying to think of little things he could do to get him better, little things. And sometimes it would come across as a little bit like, like preachy a little bit, because he'd come and he'd pull you aside and be like, I watched you do something. And if you maybe just change this, like, dude, don't worry about yourself. But I back to that, and I wish I could hear more of those things that he had to say, because he was always looking around. Like, he was always trying to figure out, like, based on the environment and everybody we got here, like, what are things that we can learn from this? That's rare. And that's what he was saying. At least that's what I interpret when he says, we came to do something special. We are, greater than the sum of all of our parts. And like, that is true. Is he who's thinking like, yeah, you're good and you're good and you're good and I'm good. but like we are great. So like, how do we figure out that we part that makes us great? And, just special guy like that. But I think he's a great, great example. And then just to kind of talk about what you said, which is like, yeah, I did say that thing. And the doc at the end is like, sometimes you don't, for a second, you don't want to get off the boat. And it's like kind of it's a weird anomaly because you spend over a month, can't wait to get to the finish line. Like you just can't wait, and it's just like all you think about. And then when you get there, there is this moment where you like, I don't want to get off for a second. And so I don't even know if I understood that at the time that I was saying it, but now having done more rows and more adventures and all this kind of stuff, I think where I was going with that is there is a sense of loneliness that comes with doing something great with a small group of people. Because in the end, and I'll just use my examples of being, in the middle of the ocean with, 3 other guys and doing something very special. We're the only ones that will truly understand what we did out there. I mean, everyone knows the result. That's why people listen to us, because they know we broke a world record or something like that. But I've been at dinner parties, I've been surrounded with close friends and family members, and you're telling these stories, and they are locked in, like they are absolutely locked into your story, and they're nodding their head, and they desperately want to know what it was like out there. And the thing is, as you're saying it, they're locked in, and they want more than anything to know what it was like out there, but they won't really. They won't. As best as they try, they won't, because they just weren't there. And that's the loneliness I'm saying. And I've seen teammates that have a hard time coming back into their real world and to their lives because they're like, it just seems different after that, And so I think that's where the hesitation of not wanting to get off the boat comes from, is this idea that we are all going, this is it. Once we get off this boat, we're going to be pulled in a million different directions. We'll see each other once a year or something like that. We'll get on some group calls, but this will be the end of it. And there's a loneliness associated with that.
So Jason, you're at Vesper, you're starting to get like these great life lessons on what it means to be a team. Right? Like, it's like, you don't need to be the fastest, the quickest, the strongest, but like this culture, this chemistry, it's like, does the boat move faster when you're in it? And do the other 7 guys love you in a way that they're going to push that much harder, and they're just going to be a little bit quicker? Because, in some ways, like, they care about the results because they care about you. We want to be the best for each other, and how do we fit there? Anyways, as you're talking, I'm like, man, we're watching this again as a team. I got a whole fresh team. We got so many talking points. But then I watch you go that first trip across the Atlantic. And it seems like those lessons that are getting downloaded into your brain didn't really hit the first time. So like you're getting taught all these things, but it's not connecting on that first trip, but it does on the second. And so I'm just curious, like, I guess, why did it take so long?
Great question. I think the level of stress that came with an ocean row was different than anything I had ever. That was it was like another level. Like, even at Vesper, I'm learning these things. I go back to my university. I spend one more season with them, kind of like, hey, this is what I learned. Then I even go back to Vesper, and I'm learning more. But there's this like thing. It was like, even on your worst practice, it was 2 hours long, and then you could like have a mental reset. Like you could go out to dinner, you could get a good rest, you could like process a little bit, you could have like something else that was completely unrelated to rowing that you could get involved in. You could read a book, you could watch a movie, you could vent, to somebody that's not in the boat or something like that. And then the ocean row is just, it's not that way. It's constantly game time. It's like, imagine like 35 or 51 days of just being on the field, clock running all the time. That is different. There's nowhere to go. There was nowhere to escape. There was no pause button. It wasn't like we didn't hit the shore every day and just say like, let's have a moment here. We need to get like, let's have some alone time. And so now here I am again, going back to the bottom of this kind of pecking order, so to speak, and realizing that all the things I learned, what I didn't really put into place is like, how do you rest and recover both physically, but more what we're talking about mentally and emotionally, when there is no recovery put in place for you. So like, where do you find it, And so that's kind of really what was shocking in that first row. It was like, I knew we were going to be out there for a long time, but I did not know that when things would start to go so poorly, that I wouldn't have a place to like recover, like respite from it, and just this idea where I could kind of like think for a second, and just never had it. And so we know what happened in the first row. We lose two guys, one to kind of illness, but the other guy because he just quits. And now all of a sudden I'm in the boat with just me and one other guy, Tom, my remaining teammate. And now I do have a little bit of place to rest because I'm spending a lot of time by myself. I've got solitude. So I'm actually kind of learning for the next 41 days about like, what did I do wrong? It was easy to like, hey, we had one sick teammate, not his fault, not our fault. But then we had a guy that just left. Really easy to just get down on him. And, I did for a long time. But then as I was rowing, spending a lot of time by myself rowing, because Tom was was resting while I was rowing, was switching, just had a ton of solitude. And then I get home and I'm telling the stories. And if I'm going to be really, really honest with myself at that moment, like I played a big part in that failure. We saw the red flags for our teammate that left before we even left. We saw it. We saw, he was being reclusive. He was being very negative. He didn't want to be with anybody. And I think at that moment, if I were to have been able to do it again, you've got one of two options. You've got either, at some point he wanted to be on this team. He wanted to be part of that something greater that we talked about, but he fell out of that at some point. And like my job would have been to get him back into that thing, but I couldn't do that for whatever reason. I wasn't, but the other thing would have been to do is to essentially give him a plane ticket home, It's just like, we got this, we'll do it without you. Those are usually, as a leader, your two responsibilities or your two options. I mean, it doesn't get a whole lot more complicated than that. When someone on your team no longer wants to be part of that something greater that you created or the team has created, if you are a leader of that team, not the leader, but even a leader of that team, like you can either get them back in that thing, convince them through some words or actions or whatever it is, or you can basically move them out of that team. And that's the same thing for business as well. If you're leading a team, managing a team, those are usually your two options. Of course, we won't get into the weeds about like within those options what you can do, but that's it. And of course, at the moment when that was happening, before we even pushed off, like I didn't have what it took to get him to be part of that something greater. But I also didn't have the courage to give him the plane ticket either. I didn't have either one. And so here we go. We push off and now we're here. So what looks like on the surface as a failure on the water, it was probably a failure on land, to be honest, before we even pushed off. That's where the failure happened. So then, you got another 41 days by yourself just thinking about it. And this is it. This is like where you can choose to be honest with yourself or not. So you can choose to say, how much did I really contribute to this? Or you can say, that guy's a jerk. That guy is the worst. He's a bad apple. Good riddance. Like, it certainly wasn't my fault. I didn't leave. I'm here. Yeah, but there's a lot more to it than that. So I'm just very, very lucky. And that's probably where Vesper and all those places kicked in, is during my processing time for the 41 days that I spent a lot of time rowing by myself. And then the couple months at home leading up to my decision to row the thing again. I think that's where Vesper really kicked in. I said, think about what really happened out there. Like what really was the cause of that? And that's why, probably we were able to come back in many ways and do what we did the second year. And that's why, Shane, to answer your question, it was a different, higher stakes situation.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Grit and Growth Podcast. We hope that you enjoyed today's guest and the answers that they were able to give and the stories they were able to tell. If you did enjoy today's episode, we'd ask that you would just follow or subscribe to our podcast. It does help us get the word out in our message. Thanks again. Have a great day.